It's a very short clip explaining the steps in the process that the Inveralmond Community High School Social Subjects faculty have followed in the redevelopment of our broad general education curriculum. Now, Education Scotland's cycle of moderation really guides our thinking and gives us direction in planning and evolving the curriculum. But many of us find it easier to refer to this as the learning, teaching, and assessment cycle. And as I say, it does guide our thinking on this and give us a bit of structure to how we're looking at our courses. The very first thing that the faculty did was we sat down and we looked at our course rationale. We were quite honest with ourselves at this stage and had to make some tough decisions about what we were actually going to be delivering. Rather than teaching things that we'd always taught just because we enjoyed teaching them, we had to go back to the experiences and outcomes and decide what context would be best suited to our S1, 2 and 3 courses. One way we did this was literally cutting up the experiences and outcomes, grouping them together into potential topics that would suit our learners. Once we had our course rationales in place, we looked at how we were going to make assessment judgments, and that involved engaging in the benchmarks, which of course have been recently published. What we found really helpful was the key messages of what to do and what to avoid. And a massive thing that came out from our engagement in this document and discussion around it was that the benchmarks were really there as guidance. They're used to support our judgments in the way that they give us information about the level of responses and skills, in our case at level 3 and at level 4. Not something to be individually assessed or tracked or ticked off. It does give us a lot of scope and support in making our judgments. So we had our course rationale and we knew how we were going to make assessment judgments. So we grouped them together and it would come out something like this. So for example, in a Modern Studies S3 course, we now have a pressure group unit. And you can see they're drawn from the experiences and outcomes at level 3 and at level 4. Then the assessment judgments are inspired by the benchmarks. And again, level 3 and level 4, what's really important here is the level 3 skill being describe and the level 4 skill being analysis. So we have the pressure group rationale being drawn from the experiences and outcomes, and the types of assessment judgments that we're going to be making inspired by the descriptions in these benchmark statements, describing and analysing. Once we had our context for our courses and our assessments, we then looked at the types of skills that we wanted to develop throughout S1 to S3. So we went right back and had a look at the Curriculum for Excellence's 4 capacities, thinking about how do we actually develop responsible citizens through our courses, and what kind of context we would bring in to ensure that our learners are getting an opportunity to develop their communication skills as effective contributors, confident individuals, and successful learners. Also, we really had a long think about how we would improve our learners' skills for the national qualifications, how we can make our BGE better articulate and feed into our senior courses at national. As well as that, we thought about the types of skills that our learners are going to need in order to be successful in the workplace. And finally, we considered the guidance from Building the Curriculum 1 about how we have a responsibility to deliver literacy, numeracy, and health and wellbeing. An example of how this would come out is in Modern Studies, we identified a national qualification skill where we want to develop learners' abilities to use a range of sources of information to make and justify decisions. This is drawn from a national qualification inquiry skill in Modern Studies. And that would link quite nicely to a level 3 literacy benchmark where they select key information and link in ideas from more than one source. So this is something that didn't exist in our broad general education before. So we started to develop questions and lessons that would allow learners to do these two things in S1 and in S2. And then as we move on, we're using the level 4 benchmarks in literacy and progressing that skill. So we had our context for our courses. We knew how we were going to make assessment judgments. We identified the skills that we were looking to progress throughout the 3 years. Then we had to think about the actual lessons and the types of assessment that we were going to put in place. We started off with a vision statement, a statement for change in the department. We knew that we had engaged in lessons. We knew that our senior phase was going well. What we weren't confident about was the assessment judgments that we're making in the BGE. So we started off with these two statements. First, to create lessons which will allow students to continue to be engaged and informed, but also be prepared and motivated within the senior phase. Then, to create assessments and assessment strategies which would allow students to improve. And this was the area in particular where we felt our BG would have to be developed. We also took into consideration a lot of work that had been going on in Inveralmond around about improving learning and teaching pedagogy, particularly through the Tapestry programme that we've been using for formative assessment strategies. We distilled this to the six main assets of learning and teaching: students taking ownership of their learning, developing positive classroom ethos, really being clear on what the purpose of the learning is that's taking place, having a variety of different teaching approaches and methodologies, developing the use of questioning to advance learning, and ensuring that we had appropriate pace and challenge in our lessons. We also considered interventions for equity, ensuring that all the lessons that were developed took into account the use of data, were promoting quality learning experiences for everyone. And we came up with this. This was our success criteria for lessons, units, and assessments. We generated this as a department, and the idea was that it would be something that would be used when we split off into smaller groups or as individuals to develop lessons. We could self-assess our new lessons against it, and we can come back together to ensure that our new course reflected what we set out to do. So after we had our success criteria, we went on to discuss how we were going to support the assessment judgments that we're going to have to make. One of the ways we decided to do this was to use a system of what we call assessment grids. So you can see an example here from Modern Studies where we have a pressure group assessment task. We've identified a benchmark statement, which is going to be that describe at level 3, analyse at level 4. Also got a literacy benchmark, which links to the task that they're doing, not necessarily the Modern Studies knowledge. We've got a decontextualised learning intention, which is all about researching and then presenting the evidence in a structured way. To help learners to make assessment judgments themselves and to support their identification of where they are in their learning, what their next steps are, we split the success criteria up into these horizontal grids. So you can see here the level 3 describing skill again, and at level 4 evaluating. Once learners had used these grids to make and support their judgments, we then enter these reflections and judgments into progress. A final stage to ensure that we were having a good spread of assessments across our BG was to formalise it in our lesson plans. We've identified on this screen here week 1 to 31. We're not holding people to that. We still want to have validity and be able to be flexible depending on the teacher, needs of the students in the class. But we did want to identify a way of ensuring pace. Things in the BG previously were drifting and taking multiple lessons. This was a way of tightening that up. As well as that, for assessment opportunities, to ensure that we were having a good spread of assessments taking place throughout the year, not just happening at the end of units. We mapped them out on our lesson plans. This also allowed us to see at a glance were we having a wide range of different assessments rather than just assessments of one type. Finally, and this was one of the most important things, we created some space and time within the departments to check back in with each other as we developed things. As I mentioned earlier on, we created the success criteria for lessons, units and assessments. And as teachers went off to develop schemes of work, they would then come back to the department, explain their thinking behind the lessons, ensuring portability, that other people could deliver the lessons, and that they fit the criteria that we'd set out in the previous meeting. Once we've been through that cycle once, we go back to the start, and the way we see this is it's a never-ending process where we're continually evaluating our lessons, making every effort to improve them as we go.